the part of technology that always goes to the dark side is the part where we entrust the technology with personal information. And how personal is our information when we share it with these companies? And especially after 2020, we've seen that a lot of these companies never had our best interest at heart. Tech scams are rampant. I'm going to tell you all of the ways you can get scammed, not just lose money, but suffer all of the inconveniences of being blocked and this kind of thing. But not only that, there's some other whoppers. I like to tell you about whoppers. So technology and tech scams, it's like this new arm of, I mean, we've heard in the past about, like, when the telephone was invented, there were people that were welcoming this great new technology, and there were people that were afraid of it. And neither one of them was right or wrong. There's always a good side and a dark side to new technology, it seems. And in the past, there were scams that were perpetrated over the phone where people were called and, they were convinced into giving out personal information, and they were defrauded and robbed and this kind of thing. But now in the new technology age, there's technology scams that we need to be concerned about now. But before I start talking about all that, apparently 42 separate Texas counties want the governor to declare an emergency, an invasion, which is about right. But even as these 42 different counties are calling on the governor of Texas to call an invasion, the good people of the USA, the citizens of the USA, those born in their own land, are still being capriciously denied entry into their own land through the very fact that they're married to a non-citizen. So I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of times we look at these headlines and that's the only way. Look, there was a saying, some notable person said that in history, that when you control the media, you control the people. So we have to be careful about the headlines that we focus, not because we don't want to know what's happening and what's going on, not because we don't want to be tuned in to current events, but because we don't want to be told only which part of current events to focus on. That's why I brought that up. Those things are happening. Lots of people, thousands of Americans just like you, your neighbors, your church members, your associates at work, are being denied entry in their own country by virtue of being married to non-citizens. All right, these are people that don't want to break the law. They want to come in legally, and they're waiting in line for years, sometimes many years, just to come home. All right, but moving on. But apparently Venmo is subject to a lot of different scams. I didn't notice originally, but it's owned by PayPal, which should tell you everything. And it's an app that you can use to pay people, but it's mostly used for people like that know each other to transfer funds between each other. And because of that, apparently it has some vulnerabilities, and there's been quite a few scams and hacks on Venmo. And I made a video a while back ago called The New Dictators, and it was also about how dependent we've all become on this technology, and that when problems arise due to vulnerabilities in the technologies and other issues, we all become like sitting ducks, and Venmo is one of the problems. Now with PayPal, I know people that have had their accounts blocked on PayPal for like 14 months, and they were never gave any real reason, just hearsay reasons without any substantiating any of the reasons, without any real paperwork or proof. And 14 months later, they finally released the funds. But there was also, on top of that, a PayPal hack recently where customers' names, social security numbers, dates of birth, addresses, and tax ID numbers were taken. Think about what that kind of a system does to people. A system that relies on this kind of information that we entrust these institutions with. And then when these hacks happen, that information can be used to basically destroy your life. Now, we are told that technology improves our existence, and in many ways it does. For example, recently millions have responded to an internet poll, of course using technology, what they thought about the WEF's idea that they should control the world. Here's a hint. How about a big fat no? No, people don't want that. So there's two different sides to this technology issue, and it seems like the part of technology that always goes to the dark side is the part where we entrust the technology with personal information. And how personal is our information when we share it with these companies? And especially after 2020, we've seen that a lot of these companies never had our best interest at heart. T-Mobile recently came out and divulged that personal information has been stolen from 37 million accounts. 37 million accounts from T-Mobile have been hacked. So you got Venmo, PayPal, T-Mobile all being hacked. And that's just this month. Now you might say, but what about FTX? But remember that FTX scam was all about the fact that people again trusted the institution, FTX, the platform, the broker, because people that hold Bitcoin in their own wallet aren't necessarily getting hacked. You can always get hacked. You can always get your computer hacked, but you can hold Bitcoin off of your computer, and it's highly recommended that you do so, and therefore you're not subject to that. But these stories show us that wholesale robbery and theft of personal information is happening from these platforms, which have become sort of institutions because they've become like behemoths. They've become so huge, and we've become so, in many cases, dependent on them that one must question the sanity and the wisdom in a culture and a society that puts themselves in this kind of a position. And then there's the question of the amount of control that these platforms and institutions wield over us in more ways than one. One of the ways is, for example, costs. If you do any kind of business on Amazon or eBay or any of the other platforms, Mercari, or you name them, dozens of them now, you'll have noticed that the fees, we talk about inflation, but inflation also affects the fees, which is like your taxes and your costs going up. It's like if you depend on, selling, for example, on Amazon or eBay, and you're basically locked into their platform because that's where your activity is. When they raise their fees 50%, like eBay has raised their fees on some of their items when you sell them from 10% to 15%, that's a 50% increase in fees. If you do a lot of activity there, even if you don't do a lot of activity there, the costs are going higher and higher and higher on these fees. And this makes one think about the phrase that you'll own nothing and be happy. When the fees become so outrageous that I'm noticing people desiring to work outside and around these platforms now that you didn't see before. I'm starting to notice that, and you can't blame people when the fees get out of control. It makes it prohibitive, and then you don't own anything, and you'll be happy. You won't be happy, but you won't own anything because a lot of us become so, these platforms become such a necessity in our lives that just the whole question of technology can be good, but if we become super dependent on it, all of a sudden we start seeing all these pitfalls and all these reasons why we should curtail our dependence on technology. Let me know what you think about that. And have you made a transfer with PayPal lately? It's like the fees on the international PayPal are like almost as much as a wire transfer. One has to question the advantage of using some of these things. I mean, they appear to have an advantage, and they are a slight advantage over having to go through a bank, because you can do it for any hour of the day and this kind of thing, but yet they can still freeze your account arbitrarily, which they do. When we become so dependent on a tool that we don't seem to have any other options, then our lives can be devastated when they block us. And so along comes Bitcoin and decentralized finance, which is a total different animal than centralized finance and centralized Bitcoin, because even Bitcoin can be centralized. Remember the conversation about everybody's personal information being hacked and stolen on millions of accounts in all of these different platforms, not just one of them. And what about the credit reporting agencies that were hacked a while back ago? And what was interesting about this article that I was reading about all of this, besides all of this, was that these hackers, they don't just use the information that they took today. For example, whatever information they got today, they put together with information they got last month and last year and 5 years ago, and then they put it together with information they'll get next year. And for example, if you use the same password, they'll do what's called a brute attack. Because they already have all of this information, they simply use that information to make a forced attack into new accounts based on the information they've already stolen. They have made it easier for themselves to hack your other accounts. You see what I'm saying? And so technology is a two-edged sword, and it's clearly, if it's to be used at all, it should be used with wisdom. Let me know your thoughts on that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for coming to the channel. Have a wonderful day.